We're almost there.
Okay.
This section's shorter because went longer on the last one, and we only have so much time before lunch, so. Everything rises and falls on lunch. Yeah. The only thing greater than lunch is breakfast. Breakfast can be any meal of the day.
Bacon. Amen.
Question.
Yeah.
In our whole program, worked with a lot of guys with pornography,
I'm getting ready to deal with that.
anger,
Yeah.
covetousness. Some guys even sodomites, men. Not that I know of, have I worked with any guys in the last 10 years that I knew were on meth, heroin, drugs. And about an hour ago, you said that they learn slowly. Is that with all drugs? Or their comprehension is a little slower?
If they've been actively using, there's usually it gets out of your, it takes like, depending on the drug, it takes a certain number of days before they say you won't test positive, right? But the cloud, if you will, lasts longer than the substance.
Okay.
And it also depends on the individual, and it depends on the amount of usage, and alcohol is one of the worst of them, to be quite frank. I mean, it's really one of the worst, alcohol itself. It just depends. There's a lot of factors. I'm just saying, if you have someone come in, they've been actively using for a while, and that can be a problem. Now, I will say this, and I think it's very important to grasp: 70% of addicts are functional. They hold down a job. They're married, maybe. They're at a level where if you see them in this, regularly, you may not even know they're an addict because they are functioning addicts. Mm. Often when we talk about addiction, we think about the non-functioning addict. And that's when I talk about someone who really is not able to do much, that's when they've gotten to that non-functioning. A functioning addict, if they don't get help, is highly likely, not inevitable, but highly likely to cross the threshold into non-functional. Okay, but not everyone does.
So that'd be really similar, because we do have a lot of guys that come, or some guys that come in like drunk to the meeting. So it'd be similar to alcohol, where some guys can control it all week long.
I had a boss
comes Friday or Saturday night, then they have 3 or 6 beers.
Yeah, maybe addiction can be a once a week thing. It can be a monthly thing, whatever. But I had a boss one time that I went to work, and he was weird that day. I mean, he was just really strange. And I thought, he must be drunk. And I asked him, I said, "Did you come to work drunk?" And he goes, "No." He said, and I'd worked there for like 8 months. He said, "No, this is the first time you've ever seen me sober." And he was functioning. He was functional, So it wasn't that he was unthinking. It was just he was always drunk, but he was able to function. So I'm just saying. And again, sometimes I'll say things like, "Hey, if they've been on drugs for a long time, heavy drug use, and they're probably to the point where they're non-functional, and because of the residential ministry, we do deal with that maybe more than the average church would, but it takes them a while for the cloud to clear, and even someone who has been a functional drunk, it takes a while for the cloud to clear, for things to kind of clear up in their thinking.
On the daily devotional book, I'm kind of curious when you introduce that, A, and B, based on what we've just talked about, and then B, because that's a lot to work through literally on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And then B, do you cover that in the accountability section of Ready as well?
No.
That daily devotional at all? Or
No.
you just leave them to do it alone and never?
I typically, no, well, we talk to them about it, but I typically will do my time with them. Like I'll just say, hey, after the meeting tonight, let's talk about this. When they get to the first time in the book that it requires them to do the devotional, because I don't know, just kind of letting it phase in. They get used to doing this part. Okay, now we're going to add this. You need to do so many days in this to complete this step. So I'll go through it with them at that point.
And that's the daily devotion.
Yeah,
When does that get introduced?
Yeah.
Formula for Life?
yeah. There's steps you're required to do so many days in your daily walk.
Well,
You can,
suppose that I haven't done my Formula for Life far enough.
yeah. No, I mean, but also, I may start it earlier depending on the person. Again, it depends on the setting and the person and that. And I'm trying to, I do try and be sensitive to people's individuality and where they're at and stuff. When they come into, if they come into the residential ministry, they're required to do it every day from the beginning, but we have their attention 24/7. So, but on a weekly meeting, I may not do it but I see they're starting to really take hold. I might sit down with them and go, hey, why don't you start implementing this now? But if you throw everything on them like day one, they're going to crumble, so you gotta, watch them and be sensitive to know when to implement things with them. Okay. All right. So there are two books that we call Aftercare, okay? And these books are not in any particular order. They're however you want to introduce them. But basically, when someone finishes Formula for Life, they would go into one of these and then the next. Changing of the Garb has 100 steps, and Authority Principle has 100 steps. And so between the two of them, there's as many steps as there are in the Answers for Life book. And what we do is at the top of the badge, there's 2 extra holes way up top here. This first level of 4 holes here is where we put the silver stars. And basically every 5 steps, they get a silver star. 5, 10, 15, 20. And then when they finish their 25th step, they trade these back in and they get a gold star. That's going on the bottom down here. So the gold stars, there's 8 holes down here for the gold stars. That's 8 sections. With the one of these books, Aftercare books, we'll give them, it doesn't really matter which one you give them, either a blue or a red star. They'll put that up in this top section. They'll clear everything else down here, and then they'll basically start again. That red star means, or blue star means, I'm in this book, okay? And then I'm in an extra Aftercare book. And then they'll do the same thing. They'll fill up 4 gold stars, and then they'll get their other star, whichever one they don't have, and then they'll do the next 4 gold stars. And so at the end, if they've finished the core curriculum plus the Aftercare books, they would have a blue and a red star and 8 gold stars, and they will have finished all that curriculum. Now, I'm writing more curriculum, and so the material that we covered yesterday, that destructive thinking chart, that will be in the Formula for Life format as a step, with steps and everything. But I'm not going to make it just addiction focused. It will be broadly focused. So you could use it as a discipleship type thing for anybody, but it'll be in the step setting so that you can walk them through in that way. And there'll be sections where they'll read, or sections where they'll, and they'll have to memorize stuff and do that. So it'll be set up like that. So you'd be able to use that as a curriculum in this fashion. And that would be something that you just need to know when you need to use. You just need to decide, let the Lord lead you. I need to use this with this person at this time, okay? And so it might be that you go through, for instance, the authority principle book, and you have someone, you go, you need to go through this, because you're not going to really grow until you get an understanding of biblical authority. And so let's go through this book first, or maybe the destructive thought book. When we get that done, you go through that, and you can just make that decision on where they need to be. Brother Steiner mentioned the pornography. This is the same as the Formula for Life curriculum format-wise. It's 8 segments, 25 steps per segment, and this is exclusively on pornography. You can do this. They can come to the meeting and do this. If you're having people go through this, don't ever have men and women in the set group together. Does that make sense?
Amen.
If their issue is pornography or sexual issues, do not have men and women in the same set group in that form, that way, okay? And it's generally a good idea to separate them anyway, but again, sometimes you can't. But in this vein, this is certainly not. And by the way, women deal with pornography also, okay? 70% of men, 35% of women, 50% of pastors.
Yep.
All right?
Yep.
That's just it. That's the statistics.
Yep.
And that's evangelical pastors, which,
Yeah, right.
we're lumped into that group.
Right.
And yes, yeah. It's real, right? So it's needful. All right, I'm going to speak about this curriculum for a second, okay? There are other curriculums out there. There's a curriculum called the Conquer series, but it's written by Foursquare, Full Gospel, and it has charismatic theology in it. And it's subtle. Your average person probably wouldn't pick up on it, okay? But it's stupid expensive. I mean, it's really expensive also. It's all online, and there's all this, and it's like $600 to do that for the year, per year. And you have to have an online subscription and stuff. I think, is that right?
It's now $169 a month.
$160 a month.
Yeah.
All right, so it's more than it was.
That's for a church group, and then, so that's the starter pack, and then every journal you purchase, $5 a month for each journal for each member of each group.
That's $2,000 plus the monthly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty outrageous.
Yeah, okay. And it's not King James, it's not, there's things there. I'm not saying it's not got some merit. I'm not saying that.
I was just going to say, for folks that have no clue what you're dealing with, it's a good starting point, but it's not where you want to end up. You've got to correct the theology.
You're going to correct a lot of theology stuff.
Yeah.
And
You can probably also buy the original videos online somewhere.
maybe
Not be part of that membership.
you
Yeah,
might
they're
be able
actually-
to.
You could probably do that online, but they are doing away with that as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because they want to get it to the streaming services, because
Right.
they've paired up with a couple other groups that are adding more content into it, so.
Yeah. So, but regardless, I'm saying there's going to be Bible translation issues, there's going to be theology issues, and it's expensive.
Yes,
Okay.
it's very expensive.
But that doesn't mean it has no merit. I'm just saying there's things there. The other material that I know of, and there may be material I don't know of, the other material I know of would be Purity Plan by Dave Brady. Dave Brady's a great guy. We've had him preach here. He did a men's retreat for us. Really love Brother Brady and appreciate him and his ministry.
Amen.
I don't mean this in a critical manner,
Right.
okay? But I used the material, Brother Brady's material, with some of the folks in our church. It's about $300, I think, somewhere right there. And the problem I had in using it wasn't the material, it was where it starts. And it really does start up here. I mean, like, it's just like walk in the Spirit, and it's like from day one, it's here. And it's true. It's true.
Yes.
It's good material. It's excellent material for me, pastorally. You know what I'm saying? But the guy that I have come in who is not walking with God at all, and he's like, you know, been involved in porn since he was, 12, and he has no spiritual depth to him in any fashion. It's just like it's too big of a step for him. That was what I found. Okay, so if I have someone like if a pastor comes and says, I'm just struggling still in this, I'm struggling in this area, I think Brother Brady's material is excellent for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Amen.
But for the average guy that I'm dealing with that's just gotten saved, that's, been dealing with pornography since he was, 12, and he's not there, he doesn't know enough, it's real difficult for them to make the step. It's a big step, okay? So I wrote this curriculum for that guy. You understand what I'm saying? For that girl, okay? So I wrote this down there just like with the Hope curriculum. It's for that person that's just coming out of stuff. And it's 8 sections. There are 8 additional books that go along with this. It's a lot of curriculum. And the entire bundle for the Hope chapter, I think, is, Jason might correct me, I think it's like $85 for the entire thing. That's all the books, this book and all the other books. You can download this on the Hope website for free and just get the other books. Or you can get this and the books. Maybe 100, I don't remember. It's not a lot. Comparatively, okay, it's not a lot. And they would work through this just like they would the other curriculum, right? And what we do here, we don't have a weekly meeting for this. I've thought about starting that as a weekly meeting, but it's just like another weekly meeting. We already have Hope, and we have Calm, and so I don't know, at a certain point you need to have someone that's dedicated there, and I still don't have someone dedicated to that yet. We just introduced this curriculum last year, but I go through it on a one-on-one with guys, and I'm having really good fruit with it, really good success. Brother Travis, how many, you've taken a number of folks through?
5.
5, good fruit with that?
Wonderful, and one-on-one for sure.
Yeah, and that's, to me, seems to be one of the best ways to do it, okay? So this material is out there. Like I said, you might, if you have someone coming to Hope that they need this, there's no problem with introducing it. I would be careful about too much oversharing and set group with this material. You know what I'm saying? There needs to be kind of a more personal. It's a more personal issue. It needs to be dealt with. I don't mean it in something like it's just more shameful. 70% of men deal with this. 35% of women deal with this. Right? Literally, 3 out of 4 guys and 1 out of 3 women. All right. And every other pastor. I mean, if you're a pastor here, look to both sides. All right. I'm just saying that's real. That's the number. Okay. And so but it needs to be dealt with in a way where they can be open and honest about what they're dealing with, and it's difficult to do that with this topic in a group. Okay. Because you're going to hear things that they need to be honest about.
Yeah.
They need to tell it.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, it's not something you want to just get an open discussion, because you also don't want it then to stir someone else's lust and whatnot, and give them ideas that, that's just real, okay? So that's something. And there's a bundle out there. It's the Restoration Road bundle, and it's on the website also, and so you can order it that way. Then this is, let me do this one. This is Hope Healthy. And so this is a study and a 50-day guide, so to speak. Now, it doesn't specify a diet. And I'm going to just tell you, I am not huge into just, man, diet and lose weight and all that type of stuff. I do think we ought to be healthy. I think we ought to be moderate in our eating. But I really think that we go to a problem when we make food the focus of our mind. Okay? So food can be the focus of your mind two different ways. Like, I just want to eat everything, or I can't eat anything. And it's like it becomes extreme both sides. And the goal here is to bring a more moderated view, and to where food doesn't dominate your life either direction. But if you eat right and in a biblical fashion, and I'm not saying, basically what I do in here is I take some principles from the scriptures about putting moderation into your life, and if you do that, I think you're going to come to a more balance. That doesn't mean you're going to be a slender whatever, okay? It doesn't mean you're going to lose a ton of weight, but it's okay because we are all different, and I think that our culture has made body size something because this is all they've got. Right? I only need my body to carry my brains around. It'd be real difficult to get around without my body.
That's not why I need my body.
But if I don't take care of my body, I'm not going to be able to serve the Lord. No, that's really what I care about. I want to be able to serve the Lord as long as I possibly can. And so I want to do that. If I'm going to serve the Lord as long as I can, I need to be healthy. All right? And so I do need to exercise, but I don't need to be a fanatic. I do need to eat right, but I don't have to be crazy about what I eat. Come on, you guys know this, right? The guy that invented jogging died of a heart attack, relatively young.
Did you realize?
Yeah. All right, you didn't know that, but some other people knew that, all right? Hey, young, healthy, dieting vegans die. Yeah, it's not like you're going to put off death or something, okay? But you can limit your ministry by being a glutton. And by the way, gluttony is only mentioned in the Bible with drunkenness. It's always mentioned together. It's indulgence, overindulgence, okay? By being a glutton and by not taking care of your physical body, you will limit your ministry. You just will, okay? And I want to serve God as long as I can. And so I'm not worried about my weight. I'm not worried about my, physique. But I am concerned that I not limit my ministry by not being diligent. Okay? And so that's really the focus of this. It is literally they weigh in the first day and they're not allowed to weigh for the next 50 days. Because I don't want it to be about their weight. We ought to eat right, we ought to do right because it's the right thing to do for being right with God. Okay? And so that's that. All right. So don't think of it as a diet plan. It's not a diet plan. All right? It's about getting a healthy view of your physical necessities. Okay? Then there is the Calm curriculum. We do this on Wednesday night. We have at 6:30. We have our Calm program starts. They do an hour time, and then they come into our preaching service. And the folks, typically, this is where they start. Okay, they get the workbook. It goes through what we call the 13 Bible Truths of Calm, and it just walks through an understanding of grief and dealing with grief biblically. And we have an entire class on this. We did the last time Brother Gates was here. You'll even see Brother Sturm over there doing a portion of that. And he used to be or still does on the side, but he used to be a mortician. And so he goes through like, what do they do when they take a body in and how do they do all this stuff? That's part of that class. It's really intriguing. And he even brought like things to show us, like, they put this in their eye and they pull their eyelids down, and it was weird. And it's weird what we do to bodies, like to glorify and pretty up death. It's weird, okay? But that's part of the understanding here is how do you deal with grief? Now, in our residential ministry, my estimate is about 40% of the people that come into the residential, they are non-functioning, okay, non-functioning addicts. About 35 to 40% of them, grief is their primary underlying problem, all right? They don't know how to deal with it, and it's like it just overwhelms them, okay? And so this is a program that we have those folks go through. That's why we run it constantly. And we do have people from our community come in and go through the program. It's a great program. I did not write it, all right? One of my former assistants wrote it. And this is one of the best books you will ever read on grief. It is fantastic. It's fantastic, okay? And so it's out there on the table. I think Brother Gates, you said you bought a bunch of these and you give them out, and yeah, it's a really great book. And so in the meeting, what they do is they go through this, I think, for the first half hour, and then they discuss a chapter out of here for the second half hour, and they just talk about it, okay? And so it's not like the Hope meeting where you're going, hey, you need to do 3 steps this week. It's very much more of a low-key, working through and encouraging them to just continue working forward. There's this devotional right here, Constantly Abiding, is a 40-day devotional just focused on identity. A grief crisis is an identity crisis. Who am I now without them? That's what it is. And it's very important to get that understanding, okay? So, and my point in doing this is the core curriculum is the Formula for Life and the books I showed you there earlier. But when you're dealing with addiction, it might be pornography. That might be where you need to focus. And we've had addicts, by the way, that they came in because of substance abuse, but then once they got in and we started talking, the real problem for them was that they grew up in the problem, not that they grew up in a Christian home, but that they grew up in a Christian home, and then they got involved in pornography, and the substance abuse was exclusively about the guilt they felt from viewing pornography. And so we have to deal with the pornography because they were just overwhelmed with guilt. They would look at porn, then they were just consumed with guilt, and so then they would drink to cover the guilt. So you have to you have to trace the issue here, okay? It's not just as simple as some people call me like, all right, Brother Carter, I've got someone I know, they use meth. How do you deal with someone using meth? Well, the same way you deal with someone using heroin or alcohol or anything else. You find out why.
Yes.
And then you deal with that. It's the why. This is just the fruit. It's not the root, right? And so, you just gotta trace it back. So if it's a grief issue, it might be better for that person. And I'm just telling you, it might be better for them not to go through the Formula for Life to begin with. They come that first week, they do the beating the odds, talking to them. You find out they've got a grief problem. They started using when they were, when they lost their mom and they just can't seem to get over it. Well, then start them out here.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a separate meeting for that. Have them work through it. Have their accountability partner work with them on that, and have them work through this and then go into the Formula for Life. Okay, they need to get the help they need, not just the, it's not like one size fits all. It just doesn't. One size doesn't fit all when we're talking about addiction. Okay, so you gotta kind of manage that pornography, the grief, or these other things. Don't be afraid to, move the parts around a little bit to find the right tool to help them. Okay. And so that's the other curriculum. Okay. There's another award that we call the Milestone Club that I haven't talked about yet. It's a sheet that we hand out, and it's got like the different aspects of the meeting, like doing Formula for Life steps, doing their daily devotions, attending church, coming to the Hope meeting, inviting others. I think those are the 5 things. And there's a box for 3 weeks worth of that. Okay, like there's a box for 9 steps for them to check off they've done 9 steps. And then when they finish that, they can finish it. If they do everything every day, they could finish it in 3 weeks. But we do it as a monthly promotion. And so our goal is for them to finish a milestone every month. Okay, and we put a sheet up that says, January Milestone Club. When they finish their milestone sheet, they get their name on the milestone, put it on the wall, and then we have one up for each month. We have a activity, like an additional activity once a quarter. We might go bowling, or we might go, have a barbecue or things like that. It's open to anyone. Anyone can come to it. But if you've joined the Milestone Club for 3 months in a row, you don't have to pay for it. Does that make sense? So anybody can come to it, but if you've joined Milestone Club 3 months in a row, then you get to come for free. Okay? And so that's just an extra kind of motivation, like, hey, be consistent. The goal is, again, this consistency. Be in your Bible regular, doing your work, being faithful, and that's really the emphasis there. As opposed to the individual award for the stars, it's more of a, consistency award, so to speak. Yeah.
What you were mentioning before on as you're going through the Formula for Life, like with an individual their first or second time, and you find out that their issue is a grief issue.
Yeah.
But as a leader, I haven't actually read the grief books yet.
Yeah.
Do we still mention to them that the grief books would be good, or do we ourselves need to go through the grief books in order to recommend them?
Depends on how much you trust me, I guess. I don't know how else to say that. I would recommend you go through them.
Right.
But I don't think that you have to do it before they can do it. I don't think that. It just, if you haven't been able to get to it yet, it's okay for them to go through it without you knowing everything about it, as long as you can trust that. You know what I mean? So,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? We're at that point. Any questions?
No, you have to go to the mic. You have to ask permission.
Go ahead.
Do you happen to have a sample of that milestone sheet?
I do. I'll have it this afternoon here for you. Yep. I'll bring that this afternoon. Anybody else?
For those that would possibly have to go through the Restoration Road, I don't, like a one-on-one, how would you do that? Just separate from Hope, or
Huh?
separate
Yeah.
from Hope
Yeah,
completely?
separate
or-
from Hope. So you might just tell them, hey, come 20 minutes early, or stay after, or let's meet on a different day, So I don't do the same day with everybody.
So, like, you probably wouldn't do award, you still
You don't do
encourage
the
them?
awards so much, nope.
So would you still encourage them to come to the meetings? or-
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
But I don't do the awards in that same fashion.
Okay. Like, if they was to still come to Hope, would you encourage them to also do the Formula for Life?
Not at the same time. There's a lot of memorization.
Right.
I would encourage them to do Formula for Life when they're done, but not at the same time, no.
Okay.
It's very intensive. The Restoration Road is very
yeah.
intensive material. Yeah.
Would you encourage us as leaders to also go through that curriculum?
Yeah. I think it's good for anyone.
Yeah.
The stuff you're going to cover in there is very important. And the fact is 70% of men do deal with pornography. And those that don't deal with it as an addiction are still have been exposed to it.
Right.
And so it's good for you to have that. Yeah. Yeah. And women too, to have that. Right.
I took last summer and took the summer months and had all of our men come in, and I taught through the first section of that book as a Sunday school class, and just to our men, and that's when they felt more comfortable coming to me
Yeah.
privately, and was able to help some people. That
I think
way.
that's a great point. I had a pastor of a church that was a church of over 100 people who told me, I don't have any men that deal with pornography. I'm like, you are just ignorant.
Yeah, right, right.
You are just ignorant of it, and maybe blissfully ignorant of it, but you do have men that are dealing with pornography, and there's no question about it. So, but that's good. I did the same thing in our men's prayer meeting. I did that in our men's prayer meeting, yeah. So, all right, any other questions?
Okay, so still on Restoration Road. So I work with a lot of teenagers in counseling through that. Is there a particular way you would recommend doing it with teenagers, like have their parents there with them when you're going through it, or?
Well,
That might be a different ball game, but
yeah,
just kind of
no,
curious.
I mean, I would probably not have their parents there. If any parent, it would be the dad. But even then, I would, I wouldn't necessarily, depending on how old the kid is. I mean, you don't want to do anything inappropriate or anything like that.
Yeah.
But you certainly need the dad needs to be aware. If you're dealing with a teenager, the dad needs to be at least aware. And you're is this okay? Would you like to do this with them, or do you want to meet with us? And I would really rely on the dad's direction at that point. We do a men's prayer meeting every other month. And then, so I just took the session. And I told them when I did that, because we let our men bring their kids, their boys, I just told them, hey, we're going to do prayer meeting, our men's meeting. It's going to be a longer one. We're going to take the whole morning. And don't bring anyone below a teenager, and only bring teenagers that you're comfortable with hearing about this topic. And I said, I don't want little boys here. And if you feel like your teenage boy is not ready to hear about this topic, don't bring them. And then we took all morning. We started at like 8 a.m. We had breakfast, and then I literally taught until like almost lunchtime. And I just went through. I did it in that session, and I had 5 or 6 guys that came to me afterward and said, I need that. Yeah. So, but you could teach a lot longer on it, but that's how I did it. Just to introduce, I just wanted to introduce it to them. But you cannot, if you go through that first section, there's no way that you can introduce it in less than about 2.5, 3 hours. It's a lot. There's a lot in that first section. It's like basically the first section's like a 2x4 to the forehead. It really is. I mean, it's
tough.
It's tough.
Yep.
Yeah, it's tough.
When you say the first section, are you talking about lesson 1 or?
Well, it's in the same format as the Formula for Life. Yeah, it's 25 steps. But yeah, so section 1 is called reality.
Yeah.
2x4.
Yeah. So it's reality about what you are involved in. All right. What pornography you're involved in. What pornography actually is. It is fornication. It is adultery. It is prostitution. It is. That is by the very word and Bible words. It is those things. It is destructive to you physically. Okay. Pornography does hurt you That idea that pornography doesn't hurt me, that is a lie. Pornography creates brain damage. That's a neurological fact. Okay, it is abusing women. There's no question about it. Statistics. This is a reality. This is not Christian statistics. There's a group called Brain Heart World. It's fightthenewdrug.org. They're not Christians, and they are not even Christian friendly. I'm just saying that they're not. They're like Christians are to blame for a lot of this because of this. Anyway, but I actually ran into someone that's part of that organization in Belize, and her husband, who is part of the Underground Railroad group, that they go in and do stings in areas. And according to them, we sat, Andy and I and Angela and Amy sat on a dock and talked for 2 hours, 3 hours. Yep. And they said this, okay? They said, we can go into any town, regardless of the size in America, and there is child sex trafficking going on. Every town, no matter how small it is. And they said, and the likelihood is there's not a church in America that doesn't have someone involved in it. Am I wrong? No, you're right. 100% what he said. They went to that area where they were at. We were in Belize. He took a group, an undercover group. They go in. They literally know how to put out ads, basically, on various platforms, you know. And they had been there 3 days. They already had, I think, 7 or 8, something like that. 7 or 8 people that they had already identified and were in process of essentially entrapping, who were trafficking children. One of them was a Disney executive. And he said, and you know, he said, we always catch Disney involved people. So,
did you say America on purpose, or did you Belize?
No, I said America. He said America. They do this here all the time. The reason they were in Belize is because Belize was getting ready to cut off funding for their sex trafficking division. And one of the officers there, Belize is an English-speaking country, even though it's in Central America. It was a British colony. And one of the officers contacted them and said, they're going to shut off our funding because we're just not catching many people, and they think that there's not a problem here. And they were like, oh, there's a problem. 3 days they had 7. He said, we could go to every city in Belize and catch dozens. And he said, it's like, according to him, it takes 8, I think this is right, Andy, 8 minutes to groom a child online. 8 minutes. From contact to receiving photos, 8 minutes. And once they receive any photo, the first photo, they've got them. We had a situation where a girl was at a Dallas Mavericks game down here. She walked off and they lost her. They didn't know how to find her. The family thankfully hired an investigator who found her within a week. She was in Oklahoma City already doing child porn. And the way that they got her was they caught her online on a social app. They got her to send them a picture of herself, not a sex picture, just a picture. And then they blackmailed her. And they said, now we know who you are, we know who your parents are, we know how to find them, and we will kill them if you don't do this. Scared her to death, so she started doing what they said on the phone. And then once she did the next thing, it was the next thing, and then it was if you don't meet us over here at this point, then we'll kill your dad. We know where you're at, and then they right off into child sex slavery. Okay, and the reality is, this is what men don't want to hear. They need to hear this. Okay, this is reality. The reality is there is no difference between pornography and sex slavery and human trafficking. Not a single
Right.
difference.
Amen.
They are the same thing.
Amen.
And here's how accurate that is, okay? This is in that one of the videos from Fight the New Drug. If you took a penny and put an X on it and put it in the Empire State Building and filled the Empire State Building up with pennies and then did that 1,000,000 times, the chances that you could pick the one penny on the first try with the X on it out of that 1,000,000 buildings filled with pennies is the same chance that those three things, pornography, sex trafficking, and human slavery, aren't the same thing. There's that much evidence. Most of the stuff online, most of the online porn is human trafficking. It is sex slavery. They are coerced, and men are like, no, they're like they want to do that. No, they didn't. I mean, you do a lot of things when you're living under threat of death and or your family being killed and things like that. And the reality is even right now, one of the largest porn sites online is still knowingly has underage porn on their website, and the government hasn't been able to force them to remove it. And right now, a couple states, Utah, for instance, just passed a law where they have to have verification of age, and that's not of the person that's being in the videos, it's the person that's watching. And so all these porn sites are boycotting Utah, and one of their senators, one senator, it wasn't Utah, I don't remember which one it was, but a senator came out and was like, it's not right that I can't access such and such porn website from my state. It's like, they're insane.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a Christian to know this. Like I said, that fightthenewdrug.org, that is not a Christian organization. And the reality of the destruction of pornography, what it's wreaking individually and what it's reaping on our society, it is massive. To the extent that statistically speaking, we might hear this and we go, hey man, things are getting better. Statistically, young people are not having sex. Like the number of young people that are having, teenagers that are having sex, that number is dropping precipitously. And you might hear that and go, wow, that's a good thing. It's not because they aren't having sex, or not sexually involved.
Right.
It's because they're so involved in pornography
Right.
that quite literally they're getting into fetishes so early in their life that normal things do not turn them on anymore. A lot of your ED stuff, a lot of just, I mean, there's such, this is why the transvestite stuff is so huge.
Yes.
Transvestite community, trans community, highly likely to be involved in anime porn. Highly likely. That's animated pornography. Okay? And I mean, I'm just telling you guys, this is destroying our culture. It's destroying our churches. It's just, I mean, it is destructive. It's a real problem. And so this first section is reality. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, on that note, let's eat lunch. All right. I am going to be out here ready to, if you want to go out and see the homes, we'll leave at like 1:15 and head out that way. And if you don't, that's fine. But I'll take anybody that wants to go out and see that. Brother Ross, would you lead us in a word of prayer for lunch, please?
Father, I thank you for what we talked about. It's pretty sobering.